or something. I was thinking of asking them to come present.
I think that'd be a great idea. I know I'd love to hear them talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, you've heard of them too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was a guy who did a webinar for SUSE. I've never actually heard that word pronounced out loud. SUSE Linux. Yeah, they joined up with Rancher recently, right? Yeah, so an Italian guy, I forget his name, but he did a CNCF webinar about multi-tenancy as well. So I asked him if he'd be interested in coming in and presenting sometime about what they're up to. And he said, well, yeah, maybe if he gets the time. So maybe after Kubecon, I mean, not that Kubecon is the big deal that it usually is, but maybe sometime in September, I can go try to round up a couple of people, see if I can herd them into this meeting.
Sounds good. Do you know if they did any presentations at Kubecon?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no. I've recorded one for HNC, for Hierarchical Namespaces. And I'm going to be, I think there's some googly event on the Monday that I'm talking at as well. Other than that, I was not planning on going in person when I was in Amsterdam. So I'm not really going to be that involved. Like mine's on Wednesday, so I'll be there for the Q&A, but I doubt I'm going to a lot of other stuff. But are you presenting? Because I can come to that.
Well, I had a presentation about something totally unrelated to multi-tenancy, but yeah, I ended up just picking up a talk that somebody else couldn't do anymore at the very last minute. So quality not guaranteed.
What's it about?
It's about the Kubernetes code of conduct.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like, what does it mean for you? Why you shouldn't be scared of it.
They're not coming for our verbs. Cool. Is there anything from this group? Is anyone giving a presentation from this group as a whole?
But not related to multi-tenancy. Mine's just on component config stuff.
Neat. Okay, yeah, I think that I'll be interested to see how this virtual conference thing goes. This is the first one that I've been involved with, and I'm like, I did a webinar, it had 150 people watching back in June, I think. Is this going to be the same thing, or will there be more people watching? Like, I have no idea.
I find it really hard personally just figuring out when talks are going to happen with virtual conferences. So I've been signed up for like 2 or 3, and then I'm like, I have meetings and stuff going on, and so I just don't end up going to any of the talks. So but I heard some really interesting stuff. Microsoft, through their build a virtual event, and that's their developer conference. And as a result, they had the highest attendance and registration ever of women. So they had never seen that many women sign up for their conference before. And so there may be something about having it online that just makes it more accessible to people. You know, yeah, they also made it free. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it.
Well, certainly, regardless of the cost of the conference, if you have to get there from somewhere else, it's going to be a lot cheaper if you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what it is. If it's like, yeah, I wonder what's the driver. If it's the cost, people are not coming from large companies, for example, which we already know have low female representation. And yeah, do you have any idea?
No, it was just something that came out right before Build that I thought was super interesting. And they were like, we have no idea what this, they're like, we don't know what happened, but suddenly like, this is the most women we've ever had register. And it was like a significantly higher number. So they were kind of trying to figure out like, what about it, you know, like made representation suddenly spike. But yeah.
I wonder if that was true across other underrepresented groups too.
Yeah, I didn't hear. Yeah.
That's cool.
Find us a Microsoft Events Manager to answer some questions. Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, we need to find a Microsoft Events Manager and question them.
Yeah, and it sounds like they need to do some surveys too. Talk to some people about what happened.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see if the CNCF releases anything about their attendance after, like any reports about how it turned out? I know like from the programming committee side, I can't say it across the board, but at least for the CFPs that I've reviewed, I've seen a lot more research papers and people in the research community than I've ever seen before, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So people that are working for like University of San Diego and things like that. It's been pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That is really cool.
Usually gives their kind of breakdown after the event. And I think Bob Killen is probably one of the big drivers around the research because he's, he's huge.
Definitely.
But I'll be interested mostly because talking to Bob, they said across all of the CNCF projects, they've seen like a 10 to 15% decline in activity from contributors just because of, world events. So I guess that's where I'm curious how it affects Kubecon.
Yeah, for sure. And like Microsoft Build was one of the first round the world conferences where they started at, I think, business time in India and then followed the sun all of the way around. For their presenters, it was pretty brutal because they had to do it in 3 different time zones. So like one would work for wherever you were, and then the other 2 were going to be not great. I was like, why don't they just tape it and then you can do Q&A like as you're chugging some coffee or something? But no, they wanted the feeling of the live presentation from the sleep-deprived person. So.
It was weird recording, but did you pre-record yours, Tasha?
Yeah.
I found it strange. I don't know about you.
It was really weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the latest on Kubecon? Or I know it's virtual. Did I already miss it, or what happened?
It's next week.
No, it's next week.
Next week. Okay, cool. I didn't miss it. All right.
Yeah. These things just like the virtual conferences, especially, it's just like boom, I'm here, and I'm like but yeah.
You don't have to book travel and prepare and get ready.
Yeah. It's just like, what sweatshirt will I put on today?
I do remember.
Yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, did I charge my headset?
Well, I remember what T-shirt I was wearing when I recorded it, so maybe I'll just throw the same one on and like, I've just been standing by for 3 weeks since.
Yeah. Cool. Oh no, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, I do miss being able, like, being there and talking to the people. Like, I would always talk to the people that I'm sitting next to before and after each talk, and I'd learn as much from that as I did from the talks, and that I'm gonna miss that. So.
Yeah, just getting to know kind of what people are working at, and the funny thing is, I always learn a lot at the booth. Like, I'm usually have booth duty, and I'm just standing there, and people walk up to me and tell me like what they're using Kubernetes for, what problems they're trying to solve, like, and it's always just gold, from like just understanding, your users. So I actually have virtual booth duty next week. I'm just like, what does that mean? Like, so yeah, we'll see.
Does Intrado have like breakout rooms or something like that turn into like a sponsor hall, or do you okay. No training at all. That's great.
Yeah, I think there was a training that I didn't attend, which is very me. So I'm just hoping they drop a link somewhere and that I wasn't supposed to install something on my computer beforehand.
I have a quick question on the actual multi-tenancy side of things.
Okay, we're ready for you.
How is the HNC process going for getting a repo, all that, the KEP that you're writing? What is the latest update? I haven't been following, so. Yeah,
sure. So latest update is that there were basically 2 blockers identified to getting our own repo and graduating. One of them was a security review, and that hasn't started yet. You're at Apple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, so I'm going to blame you because I think that Tim Claire might be one of the people who could potentially have been our security reviewer, and he's just gone to Apple, I think.
Who was that?
Yeah, no, Tim Claire, ST.
Oh, okay.
Claire?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we need to find a security reviewer, but I'm not too worried about that part. The bigger thing, which we are actively working on right now, is the API review. So we did an API review with Jordan Liggett, Ryan, who's on this call, and Multitenancy. And so they identified a bunch of things that we needed to do, and so we are implementing that now. And we're going to hold the next release of HNC, which is 0.6. We're going to hold it until we got that API in. Once that's done, I think that is, then we're like on our way to being like a real project, a real repo. And I think the security review, you know what, why don't I go, that's a good reminder, I should go prod a couple of people to get that going again. So those were the two identified blockers. Once that's done, I'm guessing that that HNC 06 will land by the end of September at this point. This is our first time doing CRD conversions, and there were a surprising number of complications, but we think that we're mostly through them now. So we're actually finally doing the actual work and not just like setting up tests and figuring out certificate plumbing and TLS stuff like that. And so that's all pretty much done. So yeah, we're looking at yeah, sort of in the fall, we're hoping. Are you just like interested, or are you thinking of using it in some way, but it needs to hit some level of maturity or something?
Mostly curious about the process, because I've been talking with Faye about virtual cluster and what the long-term plans are there.
Oh, do you work on virtual clusters? Or?
We're doing a little bit in that space. We're playing with it,
Okay.
trying to figure out if it will fit what we're looking for.
Right.
With our clusters. So. Yeah.
Yeah, so Faye did ask me about the process. I told him pretty much the same thing I'm telling you, and there hasn't been a lot of new stuff since then. It's the API review like, if we didn't want to preserve at least some kind of compatibility, we'd already be done. But we do have some people who are starting to use HNC. We've released it as a Google product, and so even though technically alpha APIs can go poof at any moment, we want to be a little bit nicer to our customers than that, and users than that. So we're not doing the full compatibility, but we are doing basically a one-way upgrade. So when you install the new version of HNC, we do recommend that you back up your objects beforehand, which is pretty easy. We'll document how to do that. But you'll install it and we'll automatically convert all of your existing objects from v1 alpha 1 to v1 alpha 2. We don't want that to be a manual process because that just sucks for everybody. Cool. But if you don't care about that as a part of virtual clusters, then doing an API review and then just like implementing the changes is actually pretty easy.
Now, was that API review, is that required to get like an actual repository, or what is the actual, where does that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically what needs to happen is the sponsor of our working group, which is sig-auth, needs to accept the project as a sub-project. And so that was their stipulation of like, well, HNC, we hadn't really idea what it is. So in order for us to actually say that, yes, we're going to sponsor this and take it on as a sub-project, we'll do these couple of things. And so you'll have to basically do the same thing. I'd start like reaching out and networking with some people in sig-auth now for that, just so then you have, I guess, some rapport. But that's basically it. They're going to tell you what's needed, and I assume it'll be a similar process.
So
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's not really like a formally spec-dev process. It's like
now
people say yeah.
So I don't know much about like the actual graduation from working group projects and things like that in general. Do they always have to go through the same sponsoring SIG? I say that because when you start to look at what virtual cluster is doing, it feels like there's other places that could be homed. And so we've been having conversations about what that could look like.
Yeah, so technically a working group is not supposed to have any projects.
Right.
So we would kind of have been bucking the trend there. And so technically, yeah, a SIG is the only one supposed to own a sub-project, and that's kind of why it's in a weird state. So if you don't think sig-auth is right, then I would start finding another SIG. But basically, you need a SIG to basically say, yeah, this is our our project that we're basically signed up to maintain. And so
perfect.
That's kind of what you need to do.
So it doesn't have to go through the same one, because I've been talking with a couple of people on the cluster lifecycle or SIG cluster lifecycle side of things to try and figure out if that's a better place to home it as like hey, this somewhat fits into, if we change the API layer a little bit, we can fit this into cluster API, and we could use the new control plane APIs for it. And been talking with Vince and Jason from over there. so far.
That sounds better to me. Yeah, I don't think sig-auth is right for you.
It feels like it doesn't make sense. So
Right.
Cool.
It's kind of hard because the SIGs are very narrow but broad at the same time. But the big thing is the SIG themselves need to basically agree that they're taking on maintenance of this, right? Because it's once it becomes an actual official sub project, then it's, you know, you're signing up for the long haul. And so I think that's why you need to find the SIG where it fits, and they need to, I guess, welcome it.
Perfect. Cool. That's really useful. Thank you so much for your feedback on that.
Sure.
Yeah, sure thing. Shall we leave it there in that case, or?
Yeah,
And
that's good.
I should add one more thing too, right? So technically this all goes by charters and bylaws. And the reason we had to do the process we did is because sig-auth uses the main charter from Kubernetes or CNCF. If the SIG you're going to has an alternative charter or they haven't adopted the same charter, it may be easier to become a sub-project. So I guess I would look at the actual charter in their repo for the actual SIG to determine what their process is. It's probably the same because most people just say, yeah, we take the, you know, whatever upstream is, but it may or may not be easier.
Very cool. It's super helpful.
I learned way too much about the bylaws and the charters trying to go down this path than I wanted to.
That's awesome. I might poke you for more questions as we go down this process.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Short meeting today.
Great. I will see you later then.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, all.
Yeah, thanks.